We doubt what someone says to us, whether they're telling us the truth or whether they're telling us the whole truth. We've questioned things that we've heard. We doubt whether the car salesman is really giving us his best deal. We doubt whether he's actually losing money on this deal. We doubt it when the mechanic tells us we need $3,000 worth of work on our car, don't we? We kind of doubt whether that could possibly be true. We doubt the news. We doubt our parents, right? We doubt what our parents say. We doubt what our kids say. We doubt what our coworkers say. Some of us doubt whether it's safe to get on a roller coaster or a thrill ride, right? We say things like, I don't trust that ride, or I don't trust the people who operate that ride. I'm not sure 16-year-olds are really capable of engineering this ride, and so I'm not going to get on it. Sometimes our doubts keep us from doing things, engaging in things, doesn't it? We all feel this sense of questioning at various times in our life. We doubt whether our favorite team can win the big game, right? Well, we've had some championships lately, so maybe we don't doubt that as much unless it comes to the Falcons. Then we doubt a lot whether they can win the big game. Yeah, we doubt and question a lot of things in our life. It's not an unusual emotion or experience. Even when it comes to spiritual things, even when it comes to aspects about God. If we were honest with one another, if we knew each other well enough and had a honest, serious conversation, probably we would all admit to one another, I've had doubts in my past. There are things that I question, things I don't understand, I'm not sure what to do with, and it's probably different for all of us, so maybe some overlap, but it's unique to all of us. For some of us, it's our doubts about the Bible, or doubts about whether the whole Bible is true, or there's some parts that I have questions about. For some of us, it's doubts about how good God could be in light of what I see in front of me every day, in light of all of the hurt and the pain and the tragedy that I see. How do I square that with the God that I'm supposed to believe in? For some of us, it goes even farther. There are times in our life where we doubt God at all. Is this real? Like in the quietness of our hearts, places we don't admit to very often. In the quiet moments, sometimes we think, maybe this isn't real. Maybe we've made all of this up. Is God actually there? Right? What do you do in those times? How do you maneuver through those times? Are you just stuck? Are you going to be there forever? What do you do when in doubt? In this series, I want to help us walk through that, because it's something you're going to experience at some point. And so today I want to give you some kind of foundational thoughts that will carry through the rest of the series. We'll kind of build on these spots throughout the rest of the series. But here's the first thing. Here's the beginning spot, I think. When in doubt, remember that you're not alone. When in doubt, when that occurs, remember that you're not the first. You won't be the last. You're not the only. At any given moment, you're not the only one that's ever had a question about eternal matters or spiritual matters or struggles figuring out certain places in the Bible, which in my experience, in my opinion, that's kind of the opposite of our initial reaction when we doubt. Our initial reaction rarely is, well, everybody goes through this. So often our reaction to doubt is, I must be the only one that feels this way. I must be the only one I know that asks this question. Or we are concerned that if we actually said something, people would distance themselves from us. The church would look down on us. We'd be judged for it. We don't often respond, in my opinion, to doubt with an understanding that I'm not alone. Actually, other people have doubts. I mean, even unbelievers have doubts, right? Believers have doubts about their belief. Unbelievers have doubts about their unbelief. It's interesting, especially during times of national or global tragedy. Someone who typically would say they don't believe in God, their vocabulary kind of slips into almost religious sounding verbiage about meaning and purpose and making sense and even prayer. Like it just kind of slips out when normally they would be very much atheist or I don't believe or agnostic. I'm not sure if there is a God. But even unbelievers doubt their unbelief at times. It's a universal experience. It's something we all walk through. And here's what's strange about that to me. It's strange that a universal experience makes us feel so isolated. If it's something we all experience to one degree or another, it's strange that it causes us to distance ourselves or not share that or not admit that because we've all experienced it. We've all felt it. And on the one hand, I understand that reaction. I understand it from a couple of perspectives. One being that often in the church, often with Christians, we get such pushback about our doubts. We get such defensiveness about our doubts that we get conditioned to holding our doubts close to us. Right? Some people feel like any expressed doubt is a threat to their whole belief system. They're worried that, this might lead somewhere. This is a slippery slope that's going to take us somewhere. And so some of you maybe have expressed doubts in the past and someone has reacted towards that. And you learned pretty quickly, we don't talk about that. Right? We don't talk about Bruno. We don't talk about doubts, right? You figured it out. I just don't talk about that because people can't handle if I'm honest about my doubts. But it's something we all feel. It's something we all experience. Yeah, again, different types of doubts, different lengths of doubting, different specifics of doubt. And I think that's another thing that makes us hesitant to share our doubts because we're always thinking, I doubt the really big ones. Like mine are the really bad ones. Everybody else has kind of normal doubts. I have really bad doubts. No, we just all have doubts at times. We all experience doubt at times. We question things at times. One of the things I like to do is I like to connect people with similar backgrounds or interests. Like if I find out you're really interested in this thing and I know somebody else is interested in that, I want to find a way to introduce the two of you so that you can share your mutual interests, or you both work in the same type of industry. That I always think, you should meet so-and-so because she works in that same industry just like you do. I think y'all would have a lot in common. Or even people who have gone through similar struggles or challenges or tragedies or difficulties. And I always want to do it the right way. But I often think, I know somebody else has been through that. I bet y'all could really help each other. I think you would be encouraged if you talk to this person. So I'm always thinking like, how can I get these people connected? Some of you have even come to me and said, I don't talk about it a lot, but I went through this and I learned a lot and it was really difficult. And if you know of anybody going through that ever, you could connect them to me and I'd be glad to talk to them. So since I like connecting people who have some similarities, I want to introduce you to somebody who has doubts, like you have doubts. Just say hello to the person sitting next to you. Yeah, that person has doubted. Right? That person, whoever you just said hi to, whosever name it was, that person's doubted at some point. Because doubt is a universal experience for us. Now, if you come to me after the service and say, when it comes to spiritual things, I have never doubted. When it comes to my faith, I have never doubted since I committed my life to Christ. I'm going to believe you because I'm not you. Like, I don't have your experiences. I don't know your mind. I'm going to trust you. I'm just telling you that my experience as a person and as a pastor is that this is a universal experience. And yet, it makes us feel isolated because we're afraid to talk about it. Even people in the Bible doubt it. If you've ever read the Bible, you just keep meeting doubters all the way through. People who they had moments in their life when they didn't trust God fully. Here's one example. This is Matthew 28, last chapter of the book of Matthew. This is post-Easter, so Jesus dies. He rises on Easter. He's visited with his disciples several times. And then we read this in Matthew 28, verses 16 and 17. Then the 11 disciples, okay, so 12 minus Judas. It's those 11. It's not a general term for followers of Jesus. These are 11 guys who were with Jesus every day for 3 years, saw him die, knew that he rose again, had seen him alive after his crucifixion. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. The 11 guys, the 11 disciples, heard him teach, watched him die, had seen him come alive after dying, and we're not told who they were. They were kind of saving face of whoever that group was. But the Bible says they worshiped him, but in the back of some of their minds, they were going, I don't know. I don't know if this is real. I don't know what to do with this. Even those guys doubted. Abraham, the guy who launched God's people, launched the nation. God comes to Abraham in Genesis and says, like, I want you to leave the polytheistic environment that you're in, your background of false gods and polytheism, and I'm going to take you to the promised land, and I'm going to be your one God. You're going to be a monotheistic people. I am the only God. You're going to put away all these other gods. You're my guy. I'm going to take you to the promised land. I'm going to establish you as a nation. And you read the story of Abraham, and he's constantly doubting what God's doing. God, are you going to do what you said? You promised, but I don't think it's coming true. Sarah, his wife, doubter. You read some of the Psalms that David wrote, doubter. Like, there were times David was like, I hate this whole thing. Everything's terrible. Everything's awful. God, where are you? David was a doubter. Peter was a doubter. Thomas was a doubter. The Bible is full of doubters. If you ever feel bad for doubting, just read the Bible. Because it is full of people who had deep questions and they didn't understand and they wondered and they wanted answers. Here's something else, kind of foundational to our talk. When in doubt, remember that doubt is not good or bad, it's simply human. It's not good or bad. Doubt is a human experience. It is a part of the fact that you and I, we're fallible. We don't know everything. We're not God. We don't have all of the answers. Not everything makes sense to us. We're human. All right? And doubt in and of itself is not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's what you will experience because you are a human. It's a human thing. Now, doubt can lead us to good places. I've experienced often in my life a question that I had. What started as a doubt, what started as confusion, as I walked through that, I got clarity about what I believed. I got clarity about what the Bible taught. But it started with me doubting. It started with me investigating. It started with me questioning. It started with me saying, I don't think I believe that. And then God used that to grow my faith, to mature my spiritual life in walking with Him. We're going to talk about this more next week. Doubt can move you in a very good direction and destination ultimately, but the opposite is true as well. Doubt can move us away from God. Doubt can sap our spiritual strength and joy. Doubt can disconnect us from other believers, again, because it sometimes isolates us. We push back. We push away from the church. We push away from community. We push away from spiritual pursuit. Doubt by itself is not good or bad. The way we respond to doubt determines that. What we do with our doubts, how we walk through our doubts, determines whether doubt will lead us to a better place or a bad place. Because it can do both. It can lead us to a better place, but it can also lead us to a bad place. So my next thought is this: when in doubt, just keep moving forward. You're going to experience it. Keep moving towards God. Keep moving towards Jesus. Keep moving towards truth. Don't settle down in doubt. Don't use doubt as an excuse to stop moving. Again, to disconnect yourself from spiritual community. Liminal space is a term that we use to describe transitional spaces in life. In other words, it's not places you go to stay, it's places you go to get from point A to point B. You pass through what are called liminal spaces. For example, hallways are liminal spaces. And nobody goes to the hallway to stay. You shouldn't live in the hallway. The hallway is good for getting you from one room to the next room, right? Now, maybe you visit, maybe you have some conversation out there. It's great to see people out there, but we're all going somewhere else when we meet each other in the hallway, right? Parents, you're going from your kids' room where you put them in children's ministry to the auditorium, and the hallway is how you're going to get there. It's liminal space. We're going to say amen in a minute, and you're all going to stand up, and you're going to go through the hallway from this space to your car. You're not hanging in the hallway for the rest of the day. Lobbies are liminal space, right? Nobody goes to the lobby to stay. You go to the lobby waiting to get in the next room. You're waiting for the receptionist to say, they will see you now, you may go back. The doctor is ready. Waiting room, lobbies, that's liminal space. You have to spend a period of time there, but that's not your destination, right? What do we do when someone spends all day in the lobby? We call security, right? Yeah, we call security. Like, why is he in the lobby? First you talk to people. Do y'all know who that is? Why is he in the lobby? Why has he been in the lobby all day? If somebody comes back the next day and stays in the lobby all day, you call security. Because the lobby is not a destination. It's not a place you go to stay, it's a transitional place. Right? Liminal space is used to not only describe physical spaces of transition, but also emotional spaces of transition. Like we all go through transitions in our life. Right now, some of you don't know us. We're newly empty nesters, right? Our last child just went away to college. Our oldest graduated about a year ago. Our middle's in college. She's getting married in 2 months. We've been in this kind of life transition stage where we're figuring out what does it mean to not have kids here all of the time. What do we do with ourselves? So that's a emotional life stage of transition that's going to lead to a different destination. Doubt is liminal space. It's transition. It's moving through, not settling in. And this is my warning, because this is what I see sometimes. I see people have a doubt, and that doubt then begins to define their whole spiritual existence. Right? Well, I don't think this is true, so I'm out. I can't figure out Genesis 1 and science and freshman biology, so that's it, I'm out. The whole thing must not be true because I'm out. I can't figure that out. There are people that doubt just becomes their home, and it becomes their excuse for not walking through the doubt that they are experiencing. Doorways are doubts, are liminal space. Right? Doorway is a liminal space. It's something you pass through on the way to somewhere else. And we all had fathers. Right? Some of our fathers would say, did your father ever say, in or out? Inside or outside? Close the door. Stop hanging in the doorway. In or out? Right? Our dad was teaching us about liminal space. Right? Now, this is a transition. You're supposed to go through it. You're not supposed to stand in it and keep the door open. Okay? They scarred us with all of their yelling, but nonetheless, they taught us this is a passageway. How weird would it be for you to invite friends over for dinner and they just stayed here? Like, yeah, just if you could bring our plate, we're just going to eat here. Like, we'll just eat here. No, this is something you pass through, right? That's the way doubt is. Doubt's a passing through. It's not a destination. And my concern for many of us today is we read a book, we hear about an atheist, somebody raises some questions, and then that just defines our whole ideas about God. We just settle down into doubt instead of passing through doubt, right? So when in doubt, remember that doubt is a doorway, not a destination. You're going to feel it. Right? It's not wrong to feel it. It's not bad to feel it. You're going to experience, if you're a thinking person, there's going to be some things in the Bible that you're going to say, I don't know what to do with that. There are going to be some things about life that you're going to look at and go, I don't know how God works into this. You're going to have those experiences, but you got to view that as a doorway, not as a place to settle down. And it may take longer than just a doorway, okay? I'm not trying to oversimplify it. It's not, I have a question, now it got solved, right? Sometimes it's a hallway. Sometimes it's a long hallway. Sometimes it's a highway. Highways are liminal space, right? They get you from point A to point B. Sometimes it's going to be a couple miles, 10 miles, 100 miles. You're going to be in that space of trying to figure things out. We'll talk about how to go through that space in another message. But the point is, you got to keep moving forward. You can't allow that to begin to define who you are spiritually. Another way of saying it, when in doubt, walk through, don't walk away. Walk through, don't walk away. And some of us know people. Maybe we were that person who they ran into a doubt and then they just disappeared spiritually. And the doubt became their excuse for not having anything to do with God again. And I just want to encourage you, and I mean this sympathetically because I get doubt. I understand questions. I just want to encourage you, when you doubt, see that as an opportunity to walk through doubt with God's leading rather than walk away from God. This is what, in my opinion, Thomas did. Now, we call Thomas Doubting Thomas. That's the label that we put on Thomas, which is rather unfortunate because Thomas's doubting was just this one hallway of his life. It was just one liminal space. It was one doorway in his life. And yet, like we often do with ourselves and we do with other people, we find their worst moment and then we define them the rest of their life by that worst moment, right? They are this person. No, they were wrong and that was bad, but that's not the whole scope of their life. We do that with Thomas. He had this moment of doubt, and we've labeled him as a doubter. Here's where it happens. This is John chapter 20, if you want to follow along in your copy of the Bible. John chapter 20, Jesus, just to set it up, Jesus appears to his disciples. Thomas isn't in the room. And all of his disciples then start telling Thomas, we saw Jesus, and this is what happens. Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we've seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. And so there's this moment. And it's somewhat understandable. All of his friends are saying, Jesus is alive, even though Thomas knew that Jesus had died. I mean, we get that tension if we're actually put ourselves in Thomas's shoes. And Thomas has a moment of doubt. The problem, though, is there's so many other times that Thomas was so confident. On Palm Sunday, we talked about Lazarus and Jesus bringing Lazarus back from the grave. If you were here, maybe you remember some of that. There's a moment in that story where Jesus says to his disciples, okay, we're going to go back to where Lazarus is, back to Judea. And the disciples all say, no, we can't go back. They want to kill you there. All of your enemies are right there. If we go back, they're going to try to kill you. And everybody's worried. Thomas is the one who speaks up and says, let us also go. Let us go with Jesus that we might die with Jesus. That doesn't sound like doubting Thomas to me. Let's go back and we'll just die with Jesus because we believe him so much. That's not doubting Thomas. That's bold Thomas. That's confident Thomas. Right? That's passionate Thomas. Fast forward to after this moment, according to church tradition, Thomas becomes a missionary to India, takes the gospel to India, first person to take the gospel of Jesus to India, and then is martyred for his faith as a missionary and evangelist in India. Again, that doesn't sound like doubting Thomas to me. Sounds like bold Thomas, faithful Thomas, confident Thomas. So before this moment, he's confident and bold, willing to die for Jesus. After this moment, he does actually die for his faith. He's bold and confident. And then there's this one little moment that Thomas passes through. There's one little space in his life where he questions and he doubts and he wonders. That's not all that Thomas was. And it's not all that you are. You and I will walk through those seasons of our life. We will walk through those doorways. It won't just be once. It'll be periodically throughout our life. We'll have questions and struggles to make sense of. And sometimes we'll doubt the whole thing, some of us, right? Is any of this true? And what Thomas teaches us is, look, you just got to keep walking with Jesus. Beautiful thing about this story is Jesus shows up at another meeting of the disciples and Thomas is there. And Jesus doesn't yell at Thomas. Jesus doesn't say, how could you? I just died for you. Any idea how painful that was? And you doubt me. You don't even believe me. Jesus doesn't do any of that. Jesus gently, graciously says, Thomas, let me help. Let's walk through this together. If you remember the story, Jesus says to Thomas, touch my hands if that's what you need. Here's where my side was pierced. Touch it. Put your hand right here. Whatever you need. I want to walk you through this time that you're doubting, and I want to bring you out on the other side. And this is what Jesus says to us. When you doubt, your immediate reaction doesn't have to be shame. It doesn't have to be to pull back, because Jesus steps into that moment graciously and says, come on, I'll walk with you through this. I'm not going to abandon you in the middle of this. I want to get you through to the other side. I know that is not how all Christians respond to doubt. I know that's not how all churches respond to doubt. I mean, let's be honest. Sometimes the church has said, look, you don't open that door. Right? We don't ask that. No, we don't ask those questions. We just believe. You just have to trust. And they start nailing doors shut. You can't ask that. Nobody should ask that question. Some of you, a part of your spiritual past, we might say spiritual baggage, is you just had some genuine things you didn't understand, and you weren't allowed to voice those. You were told you just got to believe. You just got to trust. You shouldn't ask those things. That is not what Jesus does to Thomas. Jesus graciously, gently says, Thomas, let's walk this out together. And if that's the way Jesus responded to doubt, isn't that the way you and I should respond to doubt in other people? Not to get defensive, not to feel like they're a threat to our belief system, but to gently, graciously, lovingly say, I've had some tensions very similar to that. I've struggled too. Let's see if we can walk through this together. Some of your stories of church and spiritual life would be vastly different if somebody had done that with you. Because you had questions and you were told, we don't open that door. And if somebody had said, now let's walk through this together. Some of us were raised with that, we don't ask the question. And so we've said that to our kids, right? That's been our approach to our kids. We don't ask those questions. But here's the problem, Mom and Dad. Your kids are asking the question anyway. And the question doesn't go away just because you tell them not to ask it. It doesn't go away. You know that. When we silence the question, when we say don't ask that, the question doesn't go away. Your kid doesn't go, oh, okay, I'll never ask that again. They don't respond to anything you say like that. They may not ask it again. They may not bring it up again, but it doesn't go away. Doubt only grows when we don't walk people through those questions. It only grows. You only get more suspicious. You're this way with any organization. Like an organization that won't answer a question makes you more concerned about that organization, right? Church and spirituality is the same way. If we're defensive, if we're argumentative, if we feel threatened, if we won't listen to the questions, then obviously doubt's going to increase in that person. You must have something to hide. You must not know what you think. But the opposite's true as well. Faith tends to grow when we lovingly, honestly walk people through these seasons of doubt. Faith tends to grow. Aha moments tend to happen when we just commit to this work of walking through doubt. Now, as we're launching this series, let me make just a couple of clarifications because I don't want to mislead you. I don't want to set expectations in the wrong place. A couple of clarifications about where we're going and what we've covered today. And the first one is this. I am not suggesting that there is always a clear, satisfying answer to every question that we can come up with. Okay. For most questions, there are. For most questions, when we get a little broader understanding of God's work and the Bible, we talk to somebody that's a little bit smarter than us or they've walked with God a little bit more than us, very often there is some sort of resolution in my questioning. But I'm not suggesting that every question you're going to have, there's going to be this immediate, fulfilling answer. That's not always the case. Often what creates spiritual growth, though, is not necessarily a definitive answer, but it's the journey of wrestling with God and spiritual things. It's the asking of the question. It's the digging deeper. It's the understanding why not everyone believes this. It's the understanding of why somebody sees this differently than I do. It's the exploring more of God. I think for most of our questions, there's a path to getting a fulfilling answer. There are just some questions that in our humanity, we're never going to fully nail down. Another thing about this analogy of liminal space. Like all analogies, it has its weakness. It falls apart at some point. And let me explain at least one place where it falls apart. Walking through doubt is not necessarily leaving all of one place and arriving at a completely new place. And we'll hit more on this next week. While I think the hallway analogy works well in the sense that we should keep moving until we see where God wants to take us, wrestling with doubt does not necessarily mean that I leave everything I've ever known behind and now I believe something completely different. It's not that this room for that room. When you leave the lobby, you don't take part of it with you in real life. Right? That would be weird. If you carry the chair out of the lobby and just wanted to bring this with me and I'm going to sit here, that would be weird, right? So you completely leave a room and you arrive in a completely new room. Doubt is not that way. As a matter of fact, there have been times that I've had questions and I've opened the door and I've asked questions and I've doubted for a while. And as I read and studied and talked to people that I trusted and people who are smarter than me, what has happened is I've closed the door and stepped back in the same room I was in. Like, you know what? I do still believe the same thing about that issue or about God. My beliefs haven't changed, but I needed to explore it a little bit to find out why I stay in this room, why I believe what everybody believes in this room. Sometimes I just step back and close the door and say, well, I was on the right track the whole time. I just needed a few pieces left. Other times, I step into a season of doubting And I take most of my current room with me, but there's like this little area that I've nuanced, I've adjusted, I've reworked. Because I think back to maybe something I internalized growing up. I thought the church was saying this, or maybe the church was saying this, but it was more their tradition or their culture, and it wasn't what God was saying, it's just what they were saying. And so I've kind of edited that, I've filled that out a little bit, but I didn't trade everything I believed before for some new belief in the future. And that's kind of where I want to leave us today. That if you doubt, you're not alone. Keep walking forward. Jesus is with you, and he wants to walk through this season of doubt with you. He wants to take you somewhere. He wants to affirm your faith and strengthen your faith and teach you through this season. So keep walking. You may get to the end of this walk and be right back in the same room you've been in. And he just affirmed everything that you believed. You just needed to test it a little bit. Or you may modify some of that room to be more in line with what God in his word actually says. It's interesting in Jesus' conversation with Thomas. He mentions you. He talks about you. Right at the end of this conversation. He's talking to Thomas. He's moved Thomas through this season of doubt. And Thomas is now confident again. He's going to be a missionary and evangelist. He's going to give his life for his faith. But right at the end of that conversation, in verse 29, Thomas says, "My Lord and my God." In other words, he reaffirms his belief in Jesus. "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told Thomas, "Because you've seen me, you've believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." That's you. It seems to me in Jesus' conversation with Thomas, Jesus gets to the end and says, "Thomas, you're kind of lucky because I'm here. And you can see me and touch me, but for thousands of years after you, there are people who are going to believe even though they didn't physically see me." And Jesus seems to be suggesting that, boy, that's even harder faith. That's you. Jesus pronounces a special blessing when you believe and you haven't seen. Blessed are those, Jesus says, who have not seen and yet believe. If you doubt this morning, Jesus looks graciously at you and gently at you and loves you and wants to bring you to a place of greater belief. Let's pray. God, thank you that you are not harsh with us in our doubts, that you know that we are human and fallible, and we struggle to see everything and know everything, and you allow us to have real questions about real life, to explore those and to walk those hallways. And you do it gently and lovingly and graciously. So God, help us not to isolate ourselves when we doubt. Help us not to push back. Help us not to draw a line. Help us to realize I just got to keep moving forward. I got to keep thinking. I got to keep asking. I got to keep praying. I got to keep reading until God leads me to where he wants me to be. I pray especially for those in this room who have real doubts, honest doubts, that they would just feel the confirmation of your love, that you are not done with them, you have not abandoned them, that you're walking with them. I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.